Hi, welcome back to my garden. It has been a long time. I'm going to take a wild stab and say that my last film was probably round about last November. I say that because I did make another film which I never published. It was yet another of my rants about Black Friday and consumerism run wild. I don't think I ever published it. And then stuff happened and life got in the way, and my long running habit of making these films pretty consistently on a weekly basis just unraveled. And I guess that's what habits do. I don't think I'm uniquely bad or I deserve a slap on the wrist. It happens. In my case, of course, this is something I do on the side. It's a way of communicating with a few people out there. It's a bit of a laugh. So no harm done by not making these films, and it's not like I haven't been doing other things. Although an interesting observation, as my film producing habit is unraveled, so has a lot of other things that had sort of been part of my daily existence. I worked less on my sculpture than I used to. My chess training has gone up and down. I've probably spent more time watching senseless nonsense on YouTube. And as I reflect on the last couple of years, really, maybe 3, as my sort of sculpture output has not dwindled, but declined. That's a better word. It's not that I haven't been engaged with the art community, I haven't been making new things, I haven't been showing my work, but the sort of more disciplined focus has unraveled. And there have been reasons for that. And there are other things that I have managed to do. Administrative things, sorting out passports and documents, selling my apartment in Sao Paulo, all sorts of other stuff, surgery. These things have happened, and each one of them has been important and taken up time, and then if part of my day is spent doing those necessary things, the things that really, I suppose, give my life more meaning, have taken a backseat. And I guess that's how it happens. But this week, in fact, on Wednesday, there was a wonderful coincidence. And I forgot to mention it. I normally, as always, today is Saturday, I had a phone conversation with my brother in South Africa. And I forgot to mention, and I thought, damn it, I'm not going to keep it till next week. I'm going to send a message via this video. Why not? Because it really was an extraordinary coincidence. And the sort of foundation for the coincidence started on the Tuesday. I somehow came across a message from someone on Instagram saying that they'd like to visit the gallery. And so I got in touch, and in truth, the message had been sent in March, and I just hadn't seen it. And we got in touch, and we were in the process of finalising a date. So, along rolled Wednesday, and Wednesday morning, I had the opportunity for a quite important meeting with the local municipality. Our local municipality, if you're new to this channel, I live in a little rural village part of a much bigger municipal district, so 40 kilometers away, and the meeting therefore would take up the whole of the morning. I was busy scheduling this gallery visit, for the afternoon. And how was I going to get to the meeting? Well, I was going to catch a bus, and I went to catch the bus. It didn't show up, and it was pelting down with rain. Rainy season is upon us here in Brazil, the northeast of Brazil. But fortune was on my side, and a car stopped to give me a lift. And there is this tradition here of sort of informal taxis. And I got in, and the first of the coincidences was that my sister-in-law was sitting on the back seat. Well, not an impossible event, but quite unlikely. She doesn't really travel very often. And we said hello, exchanged a few pleasantries. And then she started talking to the driver. And this is when it got a little bit more unusual, because it seems that, maybe I'm going to get it wrong, it doesn't matter, but the driver was the father or uncle of her son's ex-wife. And they don't have very much contact, so consequently not close family. But what a coincidence. And everyone was chatting. And then a little bit further on in the conversation, it's about a half an hour drive, the girl sitting in the front said, "Are you the artist?" I said, "Well, I suppose, yes. Yes, I am, if we're talking about Paripuera." And it's sort of another layer of these coincidences. It transpired that her sister was the person who'd been getting in touch with me about the gallery visit. I mean, what are the odds of that? I don't know, but they're not very high. You wouldn't bet your house on it. And indeed, later on that day, or maybe it was the next day, doesn't matter. Later on, her sister and maybe it was her cousin. I'm getting this all muddled, but it doesn't matter. They all popped round for a gallery visit, and that was truly wonderful. But I said to them, like, hey, what are the odds of that? You know, it's not a regular car, so the mere fact that the guy driving was driving that day was a little unusual. And they stopped for me. Perhaps my sister-in-law spotted me there. They stopped, gave me a ride. Just an incredibly low probability event. And I love it when those sort of things happen. You know, you get on a plane and you sit down, and it turns out that the person who'd been assigned that seat and you went to the same primary school 40 years ago. Wonderful. I mean, who doesn't like those sorts of surprises? And it does make you think that somehow the universe has a larger plan in store for all of us, and we should just relax and let that plan unfold. Of course, if you have watched any of those interesting videos, and there's a few of them, maybe one of them's called a series called Ask Joe, and another one's Veritasium, where they actually explore these coincidences, and they show that, I remember that on the one video, they were using an example of someone who had had a book in their childhood and written notes on it in New York, and they were much later, as an adult, were walking in Paris and went into a second-hand bookshop and saw this book, and they remembered their childhood and opened it, and lo and behold, it was their book. Decades later. And it is extraordinary. It is not mystical. It's not magic. It is not something that you materialize by your mental processes. As these videos show, it would be surprising if these didn't happen from time to time. But, and they probably happen more frequently to many people who simply don't notice them, who don't pay attention. So there's an element of that. There was another amazing coincidence that struck me. The other day, I've been re-listening to my CDs in a wild attempt at trimming the number from the thousands, or at least over 1,000, to a couple of hundred in the interest of space. And I've been deciding which of the sort of 250 CDs I would most want to keep, starting with the really good ones. And I was re-listening Bob Dylan's Highway 61 Revisited, which definitely will be one of my 250. And track number 2 is Tombstone Blues. And I was listening to it, and there's a lyric that goes, I'm going to mangle it, as I always do. The sky's not yellow. Maybe he said that. But the sky's not yellow, it's chicken. And it reminded me of something. And I can't believe that these two things are connected. In fact, I know they're not. Because Highway 61 Revisited, the song was written in 1965, more or less, I think 1965. But it did remind me of a story that I came across after I became a school teacher. So this is in the 80s. And it was about IQ tests and research that they'd done into the answers that children give to questions. And I guess, and I would tell this to my students as a sort of illustration of understanding context in the big picture and asking questions and not taking things for granted or making assumptions. Because in the research that they were doing, they're dealing with kindergarten children, and the question that the children had been given was, name the odd word out. And the 4 words were something like red, green, chicken, blue. Okay, that's not going to work because it wasn't green, it was yellow. Sorry, I've messed up my story, but I won't reshoot the video. The IQ test question, and then maybe I got it right the first time, but it reminded me, was the following. The odd one out of red, yellow, chicken, blue. It's important to include yellow if you're trying to compare it to the song lyric, Neil. What was I thinking? Never mind, I wasn't thinking. And this little boy gave the odd word out as blue. And the teacher, or the person administrating the test, the researcher, said, how do you get that wrong? Can't you see that the correct answer is chicken? And the boy said, well, yes, there's 3 colors and there's chicken. But blue's the odd word out that interested me. There's more than one odd word out. The teacher said, well, why? Why is blue the odd word out? It's a color. I said, yes, but the other 3 words, red, yellow, chicken, have a sounded E, and blue has a silent E. Well, not the typical answer that a 7 or 9-year-old or whatever age the little child was would give. And certainly a sign of some serious intelligence at play. And part of intelligence is recognizing what information is required of you. So in that sense, it's a very clever answer, but not a very intelligent answer. But it was wonderful just seeing the connection when I was listening to Tombstone Blues, thinking of the time when I was teaching, thinking of that whole little test, listening to the lyric and then wondering, could it be? Is it actually possible that this information is much older than I thought, this test? And maybe Bob Dylan saw the same article that I did, and I came out of it with some kind of spurious advice that I was giving to my students at international schools, and Bob wrote a classic track. And of course, I don't think he saw this article at all. The two are completely unrelated. I don't even know if I've, as you can see, if I got the question right. But the fact that I noticed this connection sort of enriched my day. And I think this business of noticing things and drawing connections, well, it's very important. And then remembering this coincidence, well, if all it served is to restart the video habit, then that was a good thing too. Well, I hope it's a good thing. I hope you think it's a good thing. Let me know, chuckle at my faux pas, mock me, comment at will. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Otherwise, it's nice to get back in the saddle, so to speak. I'll try and make this a regular weekly event. And until next week, from sunny Brazil, I do trust your lives are filled with joy. I'm trying to remember the things that I used to say. So until next week, ciao.